Hey everyone, so good to be back. My name is Lisa Urbanski with The Advisor. I'm joined by Cyndee Dhalai. She is coming in from Trinidad and Tobago. And man, does she have a story to tell. So, we today are going to talk a little bit about self-exploration and recognizing our shadow self. A little background on Cyndee is, she went through this raw, courageous journey after losing her husband suddenly, and then only to be hit by this devastating question by one of his siblings of why didn't you die instead? 2 years later, that question still echoed in her soul, and she wrote a book of inspiration to get her thoughts out and to inspire other people and to share her story. And she is joining us today to talk about some of the aspects of her book. Her book is called Grief is the Price You Pay for Love. And Cyndee is such a light and she has so much to share with the world. I am just honored to be sitting here with her, ready to share more of her story. Before we get started, however, I just want to thank our sponsor, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and YouTube for, helping us produce this podcast. Because without you, we wouldn't be able to get this information out into the world. Cyndee, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm good. Thank you. Thank you, Lisa.
Amazing. The last time you were on the show, we talked about a little bit about this topic, and I know you were really looking forward to diving deeper into what self-exploration is, what our shadow self is, and how to recognize that and kind of dig into perception versus reality.
Yeah. Like we were talking before, like very often how we perceive ourselves may not always be how we actually are. And that's where self-expression comes in because sometimes things happen in life and you're not sure exactly how to do or what to behave, and you get all this outside advice and people's opinions coming in, and you may do something and then you question it, and then you find in yourself that it doesn't feel right. And you know it doesn't feel right, but because it's what everybody else says, that's why you go with it. And very often, what we find is that we do things that we may not like, and we might start, like I was giving you an example. For instance, somebody might be successful in a certain area. And we say, oh, wow, that is so good for them. I'm so happy and things like that. But if I had time, if I had the right people, if I had money to invest, I could have done the same thing. So what you do is you praise somebody, but you minimize what they get at the same time too. And you say, well, no, and you don't think twice about it because to you it's like, well, I could do the same thing, whatever, just I didn't have the opportunity to do it or whatever. But did you stop to ask yourself, if I'm genuinely happy for someone, why would I, in the same breath, turn and cut them down and think that maybe if I had this and if I had that, I would have probably done, I would be in the same position. And that is where your shadow self comes in. And that is why it's important sometimes to do self-exploration or to ask yourself questions. Because when people think of self-exploration, they think that, oh, you have to go into these deep things, and you have to, write down every little thing, and you have to go do these courses and open up yourself. No. Self-exploration can be a simple thing as asking yourself, why did I praise someone and at the same time criticize them? Where did that come from? Is it because I think I'm good enough? Well, if I think I'm good enough, then why didn't I make the effort? And then you'll come up with the other reason. I didn't make the effort because I don't have time. Why don't you have time? I didn't have time because I have family to see about. I have kids. I have a job. Yes, but there's something called scheduling. And if you really wanted to do it, you would have found a way to do it. The same way, if you want to go and take a vacation, don't you find time? Don't you find the ways to work around it and work your schedule? And so the same way you can find time to do something that you really want to do if you think you're going to be successful on it. So you see, that is where self-expression comes in. And when you come down to it, that's where you come into your shadow self. Because your shadow self, what that reflects of you is that maybe you're insecure. Maybe you really lack confidence that you could really have done that. So the shadow sides of us are the pieces that we hide, that we think are
Mhm.
the bad side, are the weak side of us, that we don't want people to know that, we are not strong. We don't want people to know that maybe we're not capable of doing something. We don't want people to know that we're sensitive. We don't want people to know that sometimes what they tell us affect us, so we'll stand up straight and we'll say, oh yes, no, that's okay, that's fine with me, that's your opinion. But inside it hurts. And you put on this face and you deny the fact that I am sensitive. And sometimes words do hurt me, you know? So that is because our shadow sides are the sides of us that we don't want to admit that we are weak, that we're sensitive, that sometimes we're not capable of doing everything, that sometimes we need people, that sometimes we need help. You want to be seen as independent and confident. And especially in this world where the projection is that, everybody has to be this self-assured, confident person. And from the time you say, well, listen, I can't really complete this. Can you help me with this? The first thing that comes in your head is, I can't ask nobody for help because they're gonna think I'm weak. They're gonna think I'm incompetent. They're gonna think that I don't understand, and they're gonna look down on me. Where did that come from? Because those are your feelings of insecurity. Those are your feelings. Those are your perception of yourself, what you actually see in yourself, and that is your shadow self. Now you have to bear in mind that everybody has the same experiences. Whether you're
Mhm.
successful, whether you're not successful, we all carry the same capacity to feel the same emotions.
I love that. I want to just pause there for a second and just kind of add to that. So, one, I love what you're saying that successful people, whatever success means to them, and the people that you look up to and get those jealous feelings for, they have gone through the same ups and downs that we all
Mhm.
have. We're all human, we're all equally the same. And, some of my mentors who I just love so much and I strive to be like, I know that they've got a team of 100 employees helping them. Like I know that they're not doing it themselves. They have that help. So people are so good at making excuses as to why they can't do something. We need to get better at making excuses as to why we can join together and be who we need to be. And I love what you're saying that all this self doubt and all these insecurities come in, but we are all going through that, no matter who we are, what kind of money we're making, what success looks like to us. We are all human. I love that.
And the thing is, sometimes we tend to see the side that we hide, the sensitivity, the fact that we may be selfish and self-centered as being bad. But yes, like I was telling you, selfish is bad in if you have to, if you are focusing only on yourself, and I have to have this, and I don't care who gets hurt, and I don't care who I have to manipulate, and I don't
Mhm.
care who I have to crush. That is selfish.
That's selfish. Yep.
But is it selfish to want to be content in yourself and to want to pursue a dream and to want to have happiness and to have joy in your life because you want to have meaning and you
Mhm.
want to share something? That isn't being selfish.
No, I agree.
That is being self-aware
Hmm.
in that if you're not happy and you're not content, how can you share that with anybody? And
Hmm.
very often what we find is that our shadow selves will come up, especially in circumstances. Okay, like say you have children, right? And you are a parent who said, I want the best for my children and I will do this for them and I'll do that for them. And you're doing all these things. And yet sometimes your child may do something wrong or slip, and you find yourself getting angry and upset and raging at them and telling them all kind of things that you know to yourself you should not be telling your child, but you're doing it, right? And what does that cause? That causes a discord. It causes a breach between you and your child. And that you may go and apologize afterwards and you may have reconciliation and whatever, right? But ask yourself, where did this come from? That is your shadow self. In that, is it because you wanted to be disciplined and you wanted to, but yes, you did. But at the same time, maybe it came from fear and is a reflection of yourself in that you're afraid that, your child may not be as good as you think they are, or that you're not confident in yourself to be a good enough parent as you are. And then anger and that rage that comes up is sometimes the anger is not directed at the child, the anger is directed at yourself because you are thinking that I didn't have this opportunity and I'm giving you all of this and you're wasting it. So you see, that's where your shadow self comes in. And sometimes we don't recognize that. And I think it's very important sometimes when things happen. Okay, I want to be a best-selling writer. I'm not a best-selling writer right now. So I ask
We're
myself,
working
what are
on
the
it.
advantages? Yeah, I know. But no, but you understand. I'm just trying to make a
No, I
point here.
know.
And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, what are the advantages of not being a best-selling writer at this
Hmm.
time where I am now? And I said, okay, well, I have more time to kind of refine my writing. I can explore the genres. I can have more time with my family. I can be more relaxed. You know, I can do podcasts. I can talk about my writing and stuff like that. You know, I can gain a foothold in myself about and really think about what I want to write about next, right? Good. And then I ask myself, what are the disadvantages of if I was a best-selling writer at this time? There's the added pressure that I will push myself to maybe write a next book or to look for something, or maybe I may have to go and do book signing and I won't have time for myself. And people will know that I'm a best-selling writer and they might want more things from me or whatever. And I'll feel, like closeted. And so you see, there are good things and there are bad things. And that's where we have to explore ourselves to find out what exactly and where exactly am I and what exactly do I feel?
Yeah, exactly. Something that I use in those moments of like being pulled in a million directions is
Yeah.
what are my values and how do I redirect them towards my values? Because every single day we're met with all of these choices to do different things. And if we said yes to everything, we would be completely burnt out. And just like you said, when you become that best-selling author, you're going to be pulled in all these different directions and
Mhm.
people are going to want your time. And it's up to you to determine who gets that time because you're only one human being. So you have to determine who gets that time based on your values, what your goals are, and what's best for you. And nobody else determines that but yourself.
Yeah. So you see, so because sometimes I'm like, when we're talking about shadow self, and sometimes you think, okay, if I, okay, yeah, I know I lose my temper, and maybe if I just don't bother about it, or you deny the parts of you that, okay, I am not lazy. I don't have a tendency for laziness. I don't have a tendency, to be judgmental and things like that. And mind you, we all are judgmental, whether we think we're not, whatever. We
Yeah,
are judgmental, right?
100%.
And no, I really don't judge people. And you see, by denying those parts of you that you see as your weak parts, they're not going to disappear, You're just
Hmm.
suppressing it. And what you're actually doing in a sense is that you are negating it. You are
Hmm.
negating part of you. So you see, when self-exploration comes in, what you do is that you say, okay, I do this also. Because I remember an incident where I had gone out with some friends and stuff like that. Acquaintances I had worked with for a long time. And we were all sitting around thinking, and like they were complaining about this one was saying how they had the flu, and this was how they were feeling. And then it kind of got into a contest of, sometimes when one person said they had this illness and then everybody else would come in with, oh well, yes, I had this flu and this is what I felt like. And oh my God. And it's kind of like a contest about who could see who felt worse,
Hmm.
and who suffered the most and who had it the worst. And now, like I explained, my body has a lot of illnesses in it. And most people looking at me don't know that, or hearing me speak don't know that, because I don't act like a sick person, and I don't carry myself like as someone who has all
And
these things, because
you
I
don't
don't
wear the
like it.
t-shirt. You don't wear the t-shirt
Yeah,
saying, I have this, and this
yeah,
illness. Nobody does.
so
Yeah, exactly.
right. And like, I don't use it as a prop, because sometimes people use their illnesses as an excuse for the things.
Yeah.
And I said, my illnesses are not what you define me. So some of them didn't know actually that I have, and I went through what I did, right? And they were kept going on. So I just said, listen, maybe you should count your blessings. And I got up and I went outside. And then a friend of mine came outside and she said, you know, don't let them bug you, because, that's how people will be. And she said, listen, I am not as strong as you are. And we went back inside, and then the rest of the people, like, they were talking, and then like somebody had probably told them that, that I had this and I went through this. I said, well, you don't have to be so sanctimonious, and the thing, whatever. And I was like, listen, can you take medication? They said yes. I said, do you feel the same way now as when you're going through the illness? And they said, no. So I said, well, is it plaguing you all the time? I said, what you have is a perception of what you think you should be feeling, because you got it, you're going through the recovery period now, and who knows, tomorrow you may be good.
Yeah.
I said, so that's a progress. And I said, you have to think of it as the fact that you went through it, yes, but at the same time, you also got a chance to rest. You got time off from work. You got more sleep. Yes, you had a fever. Yes, you had discomfort with the cough and the cold and your body. I said, yeah, but you also look at it at the other side. You also got a chance to recover and for your body to go stronger,
Yeah.
and maybe your body needed that. And they were
It's
like,
fun.
what?
Yeah.
So I said, yeah, I said, you can do that. I can't. I said, you can take medication. I can't. And I said, I'm not trying here to portray myself as this long suffering person or whatever. I said, because that's a fact of life. It's not as if, I mean, you don't boast on illnesses, or you don't boast on the fact that, okay, yes, I got through it, whatever. I don't boast on that, because it is very humbling in the fact that I actually got the grace and I got the blessings to recover and to reach a point where I am right now. And that I know that is not due to me, because I have no idea how my body manages without medication or anything like that, And like I tell
Mm.
everybody, that is beyond me, how I can do that. Yes, I can manage it and I can think about it, and I have worked it out in myself, because like I said, self-exploration. I know that, okay, this is my thing. And if my mindset is that, poor me, I have this, I can't get medication, I went through all these things, and I didn't deserve it, whatever. If I go through that mindset, then more than likely what I would have told myself is that, oh, this is my lot in life and I'm done. And this is where I am and I can't do anything about it and whatever. But that has never been how I have been. So it's our thinking and our perception of who we perceive ourselves to be. And that is where
Yes.
self-expression comes in, because you have to realize that, okay, not all the time I'm going to feel good about myself. Not all the time I'm going to be happy with myself. The way I look, my body, I don't like my hair color. I don't like my hairstyle while my hair isn't behaving. I look fat today. I mean, obviously, these are not, I mean, you're human. We are all imperfectly human. But you see, once you remain in that state of seeing yourself as less, and you have to pretend that life is good,
Mm.
and you have everything. But that's a contradiction. And that's why we need to that's why we need to explore ourselves and to find out exactly. We will never really know who we are, because every day you
Oh,
learn something about yourself, right? But
moment to
what you
moment, right?
can do, yeah, and what you can do is to ask myself in those moments, like, this happened today. What did I learn about myself?
Hmm.
How are you today? what did anything change in you? You
Hmm.
know, what you felt or whatever. I'm like, it does happen. It does
Hmm.
happen. And you
I like
always
what
have to give your own self a boost.
you always have to give yourself a boost for sure. And I like what you said about your illness and illnesses and how we are not our illness. And
Hmm.
you're right. People get sick and then all of a sudden they manifest all these symptoms because they're thinking that they should feel a certain way based on what they're
Hmm.
reading, what other people have went through, what they think they should be feeling. But really, you need to feel what you're feeling and reflect on how you're doing. And it's that what we're talking about, the conscious of perception versus reality, because you're right,
Yeah.
you're not your illness. It's about how your mind set is about that situation. The outside stuff doesn't determine that. It's truly inside of us. But if we can actually manifest illness feelings if we think we have a headache or if we are worried about getting a headache, we can actually get a headache because we're thinking about it and it manifests itself. So the power of the mind, girl, the power of the mind, it's so important.
No, I'm smiling because like I remember people saying, oh God, today is so hot and the sun is hitting my eye and I know I'm gonna get a migraine. And they get
Yes.
a migraine.
Exactly. Exactly.
Or if I eat this, I know my stomach is gonna hurt and it's gonna kill me
Yes.
tonight.
Yes.
And then obviously it's gonna happen. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So sometimes like what we don't realize is that yes, people talk about energies, but they are energies. And sometimes our mind is so powerful because remember, we don't know the strength of our mind or our thoughts. We have a brain, yes,
It's
all right?
infinite
And our
strength.
brain
Yeah.
operates the function of our body and it can do things and whatever. But
Hmm.
our mind is separate from our brain, and
Yeah.
that our mind pulls things. And our mind runs 24 hours, even when we are asleep, our mind is always running. And so what we have to realize is that our shadow self is always present,
Hmm.
right? And you have to learn to integrate both of them because sometimes you see your shadow self may not be something bad. It may just be that you are suppressing your confidence because you think, I can't step up because everybody else, if I work in an office or if I work in a certain field, you know, no, I can't do that because that is unacceptable where I work and stuff like that. Or I can't put out this idea because that's not how the company thinks. Or I can't go on a podcast and talk about these things because, most people don't accept it. And you see, your shadow self is not a bad thing. It's your confidence.
Hmm.
And so what comes up is that you suppress your confidence, you suppress your creativity. And creativity is not a bad thing, but we perceive shadow. When we hear shadow, we think of a tree and the light is coming down, and the sunlight, and we see the shadow, the shape of the tree, the dark shape, the dark form of the tree on the side and things. And so that's what a shadow is. And we see shadows. If I say shadow, people will think about something bad, but sometimes the shadows are not something bad, and there are things that can actually help you if you would recognize it. Your creativity, maybe your different way of thinking, and you think, oh no, I can't talk like that, I can't speak like that, I can't write that because people are going to judge me and people are going to say, oh no, and if people don't like it. But you see, you're suppressing yourself and you're denying your own self. And that's why self-expression comes in, because shadows are not necessarily bad, right?
100%.
Yeah, shadows are not necessarily bad because when it comes down to it, shadows are the parts of you that you repress and you deny and that you're afraid to recognize. And when we do self-exploration, that is when you realize that there is more to you than you yourself perceive. Because things might happen in life that say, oh my God, I didn't know how I got through that. Or I didn't know how did this happen to me? Something good happened. You say, oh, I didn't think I was capable of doing that, or something like that,
It's just
and
crazy to
then
me.
ask yourself
It's
that, listen, it happens.
It's just crazy to me as we're speaking. You're talking about, the power of the mind and the universe, like bringing all these things into our paths. But our minds are so powerful, and the stuff and the energy that we cannot see is so powerful. There's always things going on behind the scenes that we can't see, and we never would be able to predict. And I just think that is just so fascinating. That's the kind of stuff that gets me, fired up. And everything you're talking about is along those lines. Why don't you talk to us about Grief is the Price You Pay for Love? That is your book. That is such a powerful piece of yourself that you wrote after going through one of the hardest times of your life. Talk us through that book. What does that book represent? What is it about? And just give us a little bit of Cole's notes.
Um, well, after my husband died, I had to like adjust a lot of things.
Mhm.
And it was kind of like, I had a lot of experiences in life and I went through a lot of stuff. And then with the illnesses in my body and learning how to manage, like after 4 years of fog, and I was in a wheelchair and stuff like that. So I thought I was capable of managing because, I've been through so much before. I've had to adjust, and yeah, I'll find a way to adjust, and I will manage. And I was actually doing okay, managing and stuff like that and thing or whatever. And yes, it hit me and I did feel it. But you know, you took it day by day because I like when I like during the illness and stuff like that and thing, that's how I learned to live. You take it day by day and as thing comes up, you deal with it. But grief and loss is on a totally different level. And I have helped people with grief. I have spoken to people who have suffered loss. Now remember when you grieve, but grief isn't only associated with someone passing away. It could be breakup in a relationship, it could be a divorce, it could be separation, it could be like an estrangement from family, it could be the loss of a job, it could be the loss of a pet, it could be even relocation. You suffer grief to a certain extent, because you have lost or you feel the absence of something. And that's really where loss comes in, is the absence or the changing something. And I was feeling like I knew it. And on part of me, I kind of went through it. And then like a friend had asked me a question and I started writing. He was really close to me and he asked me a question and and that's when I started writing poetry. And it kind of connected me to what I was feeling. And then I don't know, in November 2023, it's like things had settled down, it's like the first part of it, the loss and everything had settled down.
Yeah.
And I was managing, my kids are grown, everything, I was managing everything by myself. I had learned to walk again, which was a miracle in itself. Actually, that is a miracle. And after 11 years in a wheelchair, so I was moving about and I was managing, and I was kind of stepping out and learning to manage on my own. And then in November 2023, like I lost someone very, very close to me also. And it's like everything compounded.
Oh, I'm so
And
sorry.
it was like, no, I can't do this. I really can't do this. This is too much. I don't know. I have no idea what to do. And that hit me so hard. And now the only way I know really is that, yes, I can speak, I can talk, but like to really speak to people about certain parts of me is kind of hard. And then I started writing. And in 1 month, I wrote the book. And because writing is what I know. And it's kind of like I wrote to
Wow.
myself. I write to myself basically because that's the only way I know how to. Because when you sit down and you write and you just let what you feel inside come out, and when you read it over, then you can see exactly, because you may think you are following a train of thought, but when you read over what comes out, then you realize that okay, there's more to this than I thought I was handling. There's more
Mhm.
that I'm feeling than I realized that I was feeling. Because grief is messy, to be honest with you. Loss and absence of something that is a grief and loss is personal, and no
Mm-hmm.
two persons are gonna go through it identical, right? And I have helped people through grief and loss, and I knew and I felt their pain and I knew how to talk to them and stuff like that. But when it hit me, the extent it hit me in November 2023, it was like I
Totally different
really had
experience.
no idea.
Yeah.
And while I know it wasn't on the same level or the same kind, or we may not feel, because how we feel lost depends on your connection, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is what happened. And then like people, after I wrote the book and stuff, and I read over, I said, oh my God, Cyndee, where did this come from? You know, there are things in it that I didn't realize because I didn't do research. All I wrote is from what I think and how I think. And that
Mm-hmm.
came out. And I realized that grief is not isolated to just what you lose, that one thing, particular thing. You may have suffered the loss of someone from your life, but your grief is not centered on that, because as you go down into that grief and that loss and feeling of the anguish and the pain, what happens is that every time you lost something or you felt that emotion, the memory comes into your mind. Because, like I told you, our mind is like a library of books and we store
Mm-hmm.
all our memories. And every time I'm sure now, if somebody disappoints you now, you're going to say, well, this happened to me before, this person did this, even it was 10
Yeah.
years ago.
It
Okay. And
amplifies
then
it.
and if you're talking to somebody, say, well, oh yeah, and I remember they did this, and then this person did this. And you can recall all the times you got disappointed, and all the times somebody hurt you, or all the times somebody gave you their word and they didn't follow it up with. Because we remember the bad things more than the good things, to be quite honest, right? And all those memories of all the times that, and the ostracism and the rejection and all those things came up in the writing of the book. And I realized that it is all intertwined in grief, because I was speaking with a friend and she lost her daughter, right? And she was talking, about, how she felt and the loss. And, it's hard to move on because, that memory stays with you and stuff like that. The thing, and she remembered all the things that she used to do and whatever.
Mhm.
Um, and then she was talking about, the loss that came up, with her when she got divorced and how her ex-husband treated her. So it all came together. So you see, it's not just focusing on the person you lost, it's everything comes at you at the same time, because you
Mhm.
remember, well, yeah, I had this loss when my husband left me also, and whatever, or when this happened, and all of that compounds it. So that's where the book comes in, because grief isn't just dealing with what is missing or what is no longer there. Grief also is looking at, that's why self-expression comes in, because you have to face all the things that you thought you had reconciled before. And even if you had reconciled it and settled it inside of yourself, the memories are still there and
Mhm.
you still have to face it. And while you may have forgiven people and you may have made amends for things that happened, if it was your fault, even if it wasn't your fault,
Mhm.
you know, it will be part of you and it will compound that feeling of loss you feel inside of you.
Mhm.
And another thing is that during that, you feel alone and you feel separated, not just from family and friends, but you also feel an isolation from God, because you wonder. Now, I didn't ask God, why did this happen to me? But what I did ask is, I mean, where are you? Because I can't feel you. And I'm lost and I'm trapped in this grief. And I know you're here, but why do I feel so far from you?
Mhm.
And why do I feel disconnected? And that was also part of it, because I believe that the only reason I am how I am, given how my body is and the fact that the illness is, and I'm still here alive after 15 years, you know, that was a time, because I got lifted out of all of that and I flatlined and I came back and I flatlined and I came back and I flatlined and I came back. And nobody knows how I did that. And nobody knows how I can suddenly walk and how I can suddenly write, because cognitive ability was not something that a lot of people expected me to have, given how sick I
Hmm.
was. And so I have gotten that, yes, people have said I'm a living, walking miracle and an inspiration and stuff like
That's
that. But
beautiful.
I know I could only write and I could only do things because I had my higher power with me. And during
Hmm.
that time, it's like, I didn't feel he was there, and I was like, where are you? I can't do this without you. And
Yeah,
finally, you go through that stage because that is part of giving too, because you feel, God, this isn't fair. Why did this have to
angry.
happen to me? What did I do to deserve this? And why couldn't have been, because a lot of people ask that, why couldn't have been me instead so I don't have to suffer this pain and stuff or whatever.
Hmm.
And then I did realize that then you kind of come to your point where it settles in
Acceptance.
you. Yeah,
Yeah,
if you accept it. No, you accept it in the beginning because the person is gone, but you may accept, but you don't agree. And that's the
yeah,
difference. We
right.
accept loss. We accept, okay, there's a breakup. This
Hmm.
person is no longer with me. But you don't agree with it because you go back and you keep recalling all the memories and you keep, every time something happens, you say, well, is this person's fault? If they hadn't done this to me, I would not be in the position I am, you know? Or that is where I tell people like you have to accept it, yes, but you also have to agree with it. You have
Right.
to agree with the fact that it's no longer you and me and we, it's just me. And the fact that, yes, we had something. Yes, this person was part of my life. Yes, no, you're not denying the person. No? You're not denying your loss or your grief. You are saying to yourself, yeah, you are accepting it and you agree with it. And that sometimes that's the only way you can get through or move forward is by acceptance and agreement. You have to agree that, listen, this happened. It had an impact on my life. I felt something. They were good, they were bad. Um, now there's absence.
Mhm.
What something I wanted in my life is no longer here. And when you agree with that, you find in yourself, no, it doesn't happen instantly. You have to keep telling yourself this. And when you agree in yourself that I breathe by myself now, and I have family and I have friends around me, but on a personal state, this is where I am now. And
Hmm.
I will treasure the memories, but I will create space so that because I am still here. And that's a fact that many people have to face the fact that you are still present, you are still
Hmm.
in the now, you are still here. And there must be a reason why you are still here. And you can find a purpose. You can go walking. You can reconnect with friends. You can do a new hobby. Maybe you might want to join a group where you offer support to people if you have a certain skill or whatever. You might want to try a new job. You might want to, start doing a practice that you never did before. And
Hmm.
this is not forgetting someone. This is not relegating someone to the past. Because once you feel grief and once you love someone and once you have that part of you remains, all you are
Yeah.
doing is you are creating space for yourself to grow as a new person because, in a sense, you have entered a new season of your life.
Well, Cyndee, thank you so much for sharing all that and for, being so vulnerable and being such a light. That is very inspiring. And I feel like people in your community will look up to you for that. Um, Tell us about where people can find you and where people can purchase your book.
Okay. Well, my books are on Amazon.com. Grief is the price you pay for love. But that's written under the pseudonym Faye Allian. But
Mhm.
it's not available on Amazon right now. And it's actually gotten a lot of reviews, like 5-star reviews and stuff like that and thing.
Yes,
And
it has.
I also have a book called Pieces of Me Touch My Soul, which is a poetry book by Cyndee. Well, actually, that has gotten a lot of 5-star reviews and also, right.
Nicely done.
Yeah.
So Amazon, and then you can be found online as well. Um,
Yeah, at
what is your website?
fayeallian.com. Fayeallian.com.
Okay, and for the listeners, we will have that in the show notes for you for easy access to Cyndee and her story, which is just so incredibly powerful. Now, Cyndee, before we sign off for today, what is one last thing you want to leave the audience with based on today's topic?
You cannot be whole or you cannot be complete as a person unless you embrace your shadow self, and you explore. Because you can't deny yourself what is inherent in you and expect to move forward. To be whole, you have to see your good and your bad because we are
Hmm.
all imperfectly human.
I love that. Thank you so much for being here today. And it's always such a pleasure, Cyndee, such a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Lisa.
And to our audience, thank you for tuning in and for listening and, for feeling and for being inspired and for, following and liking. Without you guys, we wouldn't be here either. So if there's anything we can do for you, please leave a comment in the comment section below the podcast, and we will be sure to get back to you. If you have a question for Cyndee, please leave it there as well. Until next time, I'm Lisa Urbanski with The Advisor. Bye for now.
Bye.